Well, hello boys and girls, welcome back once again. Today we're going to take a look at something new, actually just a different variation of a knife that you might already be familiar with. This is the VDK Mini War Admiral, and all this basically is a response to those of you who loved the design and the look of the original War Admiral, both versions 1 and 2, but wanted something a little bit more pocket friendly, a little bit smaller, a little bit more EDC friendly. So Vlad has decided to do that, and that's what we have here in front of us. So let's start off with the basics. Number one, the price is $299, which is, I believe, a good value for the materials that you're getting and the overall feel and function and fit, finish, and quality of the knife that I have in front of me. Now, the idea of this is it's designed by Vlad, and I hope I'm pronouncing that somewhat close to reality, and it's manufactured for production by We Knives. So Vlad does all the design work. He comes up with all of these different designs. They've done many different types of knives, and then he goes to We and has them manufactured so they can come out to be a somewhat affordable knife. And we'll discuss a little bit more of how Vlad and We Knives got together a little bit later on in the video. So the basic specs are you have a really nicely made titanium frame lock with black DLC finishing and a really nice carbon fiber scale, also milled as well. So it matches the milled pattern that you see up in the bolster on the presentation side. They did a really good job on matching up how everything lines up, where all the lines are, all the steps. Really nicely done there. You've got an M390 steel blade. There you have it right there. You also notice another number. These are limited to only 60 pieces in the mini version. And what Vlad decided to do is individually number them so that you always have a record of how special your knife is. So only 60 of these are made, and that's across several different variations. This happens to be the all black. So mine is number, let's see here, I believe it said it was number 40. It's hard for me to see in my little monitor here. I believe that says number 40. I'll see that easier when it's on a big screen TV a little bit later on. So that's it. You've got 60 pieces. They're M390. The blade length is 3 1/4 inches. Now that's versus a 4-inch blade, which would be about like that on the original War Admiral in the full size. And the overall length is 6.65 inches with a handle length of 3.4 inches. Let's go ahead and close that. So you've got 3.4 inches for the overall handle. Now on the original War Admiral, oddly enough, instead of being 3.4, it was 4.3. So it was significantly larger by just about an inch. You do have a hidden lock bar insert, which you might be able to see if I get enough light in there. I think there it is right there. And it runs on ceramic bearings. That means it's going to be very smooth, very fast, and it's got a ceramic detent. That ceramic detent is going to give you a nice, crisp overall feel to the detent, and it's going to last a good long time. It's not going to wear down over time like a standard steel detent ball might. Now, it's not usually a consideration. That's not usually a problem, but yes, ceramic is going to be more wear resistant, so theoretically it will last longer. You can open it by the little thumb slot there, although it's not as easy because the detent is really set for a flipper. And the weight is about 4 ounces, which is, by the way, 3 ounces lighter than the full size. So yes, this will be a significantly easier knife to throw in the pocket and carry every day. For those of you that subscribe to or follow my Instagram channel, this is kind of how I showed the size in a little video I did the day that it came in. It disappears in my hand. It is a very tiny knife, yet it's got a significant very big, bold look because of the shape and style of the blade. I really dig how the overall thing came out, and I really like the fact that he went all black. I like having the black DLC, and when you get a nice close look at it, you'll see it has almost an antiqued finish to it. It's not just a clean black DLC. This is more of what I would consider to be a black wash, to be perfectly honest with you. You'll see how all the edges are highlighted a little bit lighter because it's been tumbled. So they've done a DLC and very clearly have done a tumble as well. So for me personally, I would refer to this as a black wash. You see all the highlights there again, instead of just being called black DLC. So it's got a little, I don't know, a little bit of age to it. It kind of looks like a little bit of a worn finish, which I dig. I think is really, really cool. Now let's give you a little bit of background that I got directly from Vlad, because I wanted to find out, you know, for those of you that aren't familiar with him, that haven't followed him on social media through his time of being a collector up into designing and manufacturing knives, I thought it was important to kind of discuss that for just a couple of minutes, if you don't mind. While I'm doing that, I'm going to lay out a couple of knives to give you a realistic size comparison. For those of you that have the HEA Hunter, it is nearly, actually it is pretty much identical in its overall length, and actually almost identical in its cutting edge as well. The sharpening choil is a little bit larger on the Mini War Admiral, so it's got a teeny tiny little bit more cutting edge. But if you own one of these phenomenal HEA design knives and you like carrying that, the weight difference is almost insignificant, and the size is, again, pretty much identical. Compared to something a little bit more of a standard size, this is really what my comfort zone is generally for an EDC size knife. This is my Arucas Blameris LL15. And you see that even though the LL15 has a bigger blade, it's still very, very, very close to being roughly the same size. This is significantly heavier, however. Put it up against one of my favorite smaller knives in my collection. This is one of my custom Duharas. I'll lay that up there, and the Duhara is just a little bit shorter in overall length and a little bit shorter in blade length. But again, if you do enjoy something that's a nice, tiny little knife, I think you'll enjoy that. And I'm going to give you a comparison to one of the knives that I make. This is actually my prototype for the production version of my tibia that I'm doing with Riot Knives. Because somebody actually brought this up to me when they messaged me about it. They're like, you know, you like Wharncliffes and modified Wharncliffes. How do you feel about that knife as compared to the stuff that you carry and that you make? And as you see, it's wildly different. There is no comparison. I use a very straight cutting edge for mine for this particular knife, and this is nicely upswept. This is really, really, really good for EDC cutting tasks. And so you see it's very close in its overall size. I use a 4-inch blade. My philosophy when I'm making knives that are on the smaller side is I like, a lot of companies will do a big full-size handle and then a little short blade in order to make it compact, and I don't like that so much, so I do it in the reverse. So I've got a shorter handle and I use a much bigger blade. But you'll see that my love for Wharncliffes and modified Wharncliffes and whatnot certainly comes through, and that's why I enjoy this. And one of the reasons I want to make that comparison is one of the benefits that you'll get to this style over a traditional Wharncliffe, where it's going to have that very flat cutting edge, is you can do those rocking type cuts. Let's say you're cutting, I don't know, 550 paracord, and you just want to get a nice clean rocking cut. Maybe you're cutting vegetables, you're cutting some sort of food. This is actually a nice knife that you can carry around and use for those practical purposes, because as you hold it, one of the things that I noticed as I was playing with it is the way that the steps, take a look here at the milled steps, the way that they drop in right here, it gives you almost a pinch point like you would have if you were holding a chef's knife up on the blade. So you've got this little pinch point, you've got this nice ramp here that, number one, is going to be great for your thumb for support when you're cutting, but if you're doing something that's a little bit more delicate, you've got that extra dexterity. You can reach all the way up here to the tip. By the way, this is not a harsh corner like I thought it was going to be. It's actually nicely rounded. So if you were doing any type of normal EDC cutting through boxes, using it like a box cutter, you're doing some kind of rocking, there's a lot of practicality to this blade. And I wanted to bring that up especially because right now butcher-style knives, cleaver-style knives, Warncliffs, sheep's foot, modified versions of either of those as well. They're all gaining much more in popularity over the past few years. People want something that's a little bit different from your typical knives, I guess, your spear points and your drop points and things like that. So these have become a lot more popular, and oftentimes people that don't own them and see them in their great proliferation everywhere wonder, well, how practical is it really? I believe that the way this one has been done, it's going to be very practical. So yeah, you've got that really big, tall, beefy look of that monster blade. However, it's not form over function. I believe you're still going to get plenty of function out of it. You do want to keep in mind that because you have a flipper tab, it does restrict where your hand is going to be. So it's going to make the handle feel a little bit short. You see right here, as I lay it down, it really doesn't come all the way down into my hand. It's a little bit short. When I grip it, the flipper tab prevents me from holding it kind of where I would want to. This is where I would want to hold it, and that would leave the butt hanging out, and I would have a little bit more stability. With this, again, it is a 3 1/4 inch blade. It is a small EDC knife. You're not going to use it for hard or major cutting tasks as it is, but it's worth noting that the handle does get very, very skinny, and it is very short. And because the flipper tab working as a finger guard, it's going to put your hand where it wants it to go instead of maybe where you want it to go. So keep that in mind if you have really large hands. This may be something that you want to maybe overlook and go find yourself a full-size War Admiral. Now, those are not made anymore. You will have to go on the secondary market to find them. But I don't believe it's one of those knives that's gone up crazy in value where people are raping each other left and right on the prices. I do want to show you also nicely done pocket clip. It is a titanium pocket clip. Very functional in the pocket. It's got a good amount of tension. The ramp is set nicely. It'll even go over a big thick lip on your jeans. Goes in nice and easy without having to force it or feeling like you have to pry the clip open. It holds it in securely. It comes out really nicely. Overall, the design itself is very well done. The detail work, let's take a look close up. I believe the detail work is also done nicely. It's got a great edge on it. Wei Knives has been doing a lot of great work with their edges. Very sharp knives. The milling is precise and exact. They've also relieved the presentation side bolster to allow you to get to that lock bar more easily. I personally would have loved to have seen this done in a bolster lock so that we could have had that carbon fiber on the other side. Someone did mention that on a recent post on Instagram, and Vlad had mentioned that they wanted to do that. What I believe he had said, and you should go read it for yourself so that I'm not misquoting him, I believe he said that the edges, they had done that, and the edges of the carbon fiber were just too sharp. And because of the thinness of the material at that point being used on the lock side, they weren't able to get it exactly how they wanted it. So he would have preferred to have something functioning better than looking better. So that was kind of the basic idea there. Now, let me give you some background that I got directly from Vlad as to who he is and how he has evolved over time through his designs and his partnership with Wheat. This is how he told it to me. He says, "This is how the Mini began. I started collecting knives back when I was only 18 years old, and it led to me collecting higher end and higher end, getting into customs." He's collected knives from Todd Fisher, Bob Terzola, other legends and high-end knife makers that have really, I think, imparted the importance of making a quality-made knife into who he is. He says, "Eventually I approached Wei Knives back when they only had 100 followers, and they were just prototyping their fixed blades and just getting ready to release the Model 601. Because I became good friends with Joe from Wei and decided to become one of their first dealers in the USA. For about a year I was their dealer until Joe finally convinced me to manufacture my own designs, my own production knife. He says, I was always into cleavers, and I've even owned a debt collector, which, by the way, that was a very cool knife that's now starting to make a comeback, as I have seen recently. And he says, I wanted to design something a little bit more slim and a little bit more easy for you to carry. He says, after I received the V1 prototype, I showed everyone at the Blade Show and other knife shows, and they really responded positively and loved that prototype. So he says, after receiving a lot of positive responses online, I decided to sell off my entire custom knife collection and take that money and put this knife into full production. Now I'm going to pause there for a second because that is a bold move. I've been there myself. I funded my own custom knife making by selling a lot of my personal collection. And it hurts, it sucks. We all have a love for knives. We don't want to get rid of our babies, but if we're able to sacrifice something like that in order to make our dream come true and make our own knives, it really is something special for us to be able to do that. You can always rebuy knives down the road. Maybe you'll be rich and famous at some point and you'll be able to do all that. But to chase your dream, it's a really bold, difficult move. And for what Vlad did here, by having a production knife made, this is not an inexpensive venture. Figure you're going to drop $30,000 to $50,000, guys, to say, hey, I want to take my design, I want it rendered up, I want it made into a production knife. There's going to be a certain minimum order quantity that I have to satisfy, certain materials that must be ordered, and it's an expensive process, and you're going to pay up front for that, and you're taking a big risk. You're putting your dream on paper, you're putting your dream on a computer rendering, and then you are making that dream. You're putting all of your eggs in one basket, hoping that other people will appreciate the work that you've put into it and appreciate the design that you love, and hope that they're going to buy it. Because that money is spent. That shit is gone. You have put that money into those knives, and it's either going to be met with a great success and people are going to buy them all and enjoy them, or you're going to have a closet full of cardboard boxes filled with knives going, oh shit, what am I supposed to do with these? So it is a very bold move, and I applaud Vlad for taking that major leap. So getting back to it, he says we were going to originally introduce it at Blade Show of 2018, but it took a little bit too long to prototype, so we had to wait a little bit. After launching the V2, I had an idea to design the Mini War Admiral, which again is what we see here, so that it wasn't too small, but it wasn't quite as large as the original. And he says, honestly, I think this is right in the middle and it's the perfect size. He says it's a combination of the V1 and V2. We brought back the original milled scales, which was a big deal. Again, I'll highlight that for you so you can see what we're talking about here. So we're at the milled scales, and instead of an integrated backspacer into the show side like the V2, we added one so that customers can change it out and modify it more. So, oh, that's something pretty cool now, isn't it? Yes. So you can order different variations where you can change out the overall look of your knife and make it a little bit more unique. I kind of dig that. The Mini was the first War Admiral that has an inlay. In the future, we're going to be offering more, either swappable inlays, ooh, I like that, or a run that has a pre-order with more exotic materials like Damascus, Damascus, things like that, and that will have a matching backspacer and clip. So that's pretty much it from start to finish on how the company got started and how the War Admiral got brought to life. So Vlad, thank you so much for sharing your story and letting people know. Those of you that have followed Vlad for a while, you pretty much know this or have seen that slow evolution. I'm very proud of him. I love so many of the designs that he's done, and it's not just pocket cleavers, guys. Go to his website. I'll link it down below in the description and take a look, because even as runs have expired and been retired and have sold out, he does archive them on his website so you can see all of the different designs that he has manufactured. And they're beautiful. They're unique. They have their own unique design language, which I love. You can look at his knives and know that he had a hand in that. And they're just beautifully done. And from what I see here, the fit and finish that We Knives has been doing is exemplary, and it's also being showcased very well in this knife. So if you're looking at one of these and you're considering it going, well, I like the original, but it was just too big, this I think is really going to make you happy. And if you're trying to consider, well, man, it's $299, that's a lot of money, can I spend that in other ways and get more out of it? You know what, honestly, I don't know. M390, full titanium frame lock with the milled, beautifully milled carbon fiber scale. Get it to focus again. the milled and sculpted pocket clip in titanium, ceramic bearings, ceramic detent. I really think you've got a good bang for your buck on this. So for me, it's a thumbs up. It's a green light. I say go for it. Have something fun and cool in your collection that's a little bit different than everything else. And that, I believe, is what Vlad does the best. All right, guys, I'm out of here for now. I will catch you on the next video.